Hello and welcome back, everyone. It is me, Jackson and we are continuing our series. Did man get here by evolution or by creation? Well, there it is, folks. And joining me today, as always, my favorite host and co-host, Peter of the Gonna Go For It. Welcome back.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, we are glad to have you, me, myself, and I. And also, we have another guest joining us today, and that is Nestle, who is one of my editors. He regularly edits my video scripts for this channel, so we are indebted to him eternally. Welcome, Nestle, onto the show.
Oh, thank you. And it's also I also do it with pleasure. Editing. I really enjoy doing the research and such because it's it's the topic of interest for me also as well.
Yeah, and we just finished for realsies this time.
Yeah,
the final finishing touches on the hippo's tail, which I was working on earlier today, and then I had to go to class, and then we got this, so it might be finished. I'll probably finish it tomorrow, so that's fine. Probably tomorrow.
There was a whole thing about this thing of an AIG article, and after I looked at it more closely, I found error after error after error, and so many things.
They were fractally wrong.
Yeah.
Every time you find one error, you realize there's like multiple errors like under it, and so it just keeps going, further and further. So. Yeah.
I like to make the joke that I make on Twitter often. The fact that you, Jackson, as an American, doing a show in English, you got a Dutch editor.
I do. It's true. Well, I also have an English editor, to be fair. That's Rational Mind, so he's there too.
Although I'm pretty sure that Jackson sometimes has to correct my spelling and grammar.
Listen, that's both you and Peter are better at English than I would say a good chunk of Americans are. A good chunk of English speakers. So you guys are a lot better at English than a lot of English speakers are. So I would say take that with pride. Mm-hmm. Because there are some people I cannot understand who speak English as allegedly as their first language, and I don't know what they're saying. So especially here in the South, when you put that thick accent on it, or there's a person I know who jokes that accents are speech impediments, but that's beside the point. Anyway,
so I had a tiny clip shown on Creaky Blinders channel, in which I mentioned you as well. We were harassing Matt Powell a little bit, but Creaky is Welsh, so and she sells a mug. What accent? So that's a good one for people to get if you have an accent. What accent?
Yeah. I guess that's true.
And if you've heard Creaky talk, you might know what that's about, because I don't know anyone on YouTube who has a stronger accent than Creaky has.
Also, hello everyone in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't looking. We have Vandalia, Smitty, Dapper, and Dapper. If you want to get in here, feel free to come on. We got Jamie E. Welcome everybody. I don't speak English. I speak American. Smitty, the year of our Lord 2022. Exactly.
It's also spelled Merkin.
Merkin, yeah. Yes. Or apostrophe Murican, Merkin.
I know.
Dapper, you're right. Set artiodactyla is a nonsense word. We talk about that in the video.
Yeah, indeed. So. Because I also think it's both an ugly word and a nonsensical word, because it was for I would spoil it. It's just watch the video for our opinion about it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and also Vandalia 1998 for $4.99 says Ness is an excellent resourcer. He's my new one since Jackson wants to go and get a degree or something. Yes. I guess funny story for you guys. Short story before we start. So I don't TA the botany lab anymore, but some students from it asked me to help review some material before their midterm a few days ago, and I said, okay, it's fine. So I'm having a back and forth with one of the students, and I said, what material specifically would you like to go over for review? She said, oh, fungi, micro and macro algae, mosses, lycophytes, ferns. And I said, well, that's all the material. That is all the material that's going to be on the test. So in essence, we went over everything. Or, well, half of everything. We'll do the other half in a few days. So, it was fun, though. It's good. I enjoy botany. I think we need to put more emphasis on botany. Well, even that's not really true. I was going to say we put so much emphasis on animals, but even really in my college career, we haven't. I didn't see that, or I wasn't in that many classes that had animals as the focus. So many of my classes, even as an organismal person. So I went for basically a zoology bachelor's degree, which I got, and I'm working on my master's. But even still, not very many classes were like animal centric. I had to take a lot of cellular classes and anatomy related classes. And that's all well and good, but I did kind of want to take more classes about animals, but oh well. Is what it is.
By the way,
okay.
There is a thing called, I think it's called plant blindness. There's a good Wikipedia article on it.
Yes.
It's telling there's a pretty big bias apparently going on with and also surprisingly in movies, like there is this prequel of Alien where it's a bad movie, but still they go down on the planet and they find a planet full of plant life, but they aren't freaked out about it. Like if you find a planet full of plant life, you would be really surprised to see that, but they are just it's anyway, moving on.
Dapper by the way, says, if I eat a mushroom, am I eating meat or a vegetable? Neither. What'd you say, Peter?
I just call it drugs. I was about to mention that.
Drugs.
Yeah, depends.
Fair enough.
Depends on which shroom you're eating. I mean, could be.
I mean, I guess you could say all mushrooms are drugs, just most of them aren't very good drugs.
Mm-hmm.
They're good tasting, but not very good at,
the reason I went to drugs is his message before that. He said, having read Raw Matt's prose, I can say being American doesn't make your English good. If you're if you voluntarily read something from Raw Matt, then yeah, you need to be eating mushrooms. It has to be. I mean, I watched a video, and I still can't get over that, where he went to a website that is obviously an onion website, and he was reading articles like the dinosaurs helped build the pyramids. And he was honestly thinking that was a real article. And then on the side, you have, on the website, he's showing on the side, you've got other articles. And one of the things was Florida man convicted of anally probing strangers dressed up as an alien. I mean, if that's on the website,
that sounds believable. I don't know.
Well,
Florida
okay.
man would do that.
Yeah, okay. You got me there.
We've talked about the herpes monkeys, the island of herpes monkeys out there in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about that in a previous episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've heard about that, right? The island of herpes monkeys.
Oh no, I never heard about it actually. No.
Yes, there's an island. I think it's in the Florida Keys that has a bunch of monkeys, and they all have herpes. So
makes you wonder how they got it.
America, right?
Didn't herpes originate in the Americas anyway? Like, right?
I don't actually know. So they don't all have herpes. Okay, so some of them have herpes. My apologies.
I mean the human disease herpes. I think it's
I don't know.
It was in the Americas. I think
you might be right. You might be right. I don't know, but that's entirely possible.
Also, your talk with Dapper Dino the other day with Jackson. And you mentioned a thing about the seahorse, and you two should collaborate sometime on and do a video on seahorses. Or where aren't you doing that?
We should get right on that. Yes, that was a really fun. That was a really fun video. That we did with Dapper. On seahorses. We found a lot of very interesting information, a lot of really neat stuff. The Dapper says many of them have herpes C, which is usually asymptomatic in macaques, but it is often fatal in humans. Who's Your Buddy says for $5 also makes you wonder how all the koalas got chlamydia. Yes, there is a koala chlamydia ward. Oh, and thank you, Who's Your Buddy. There's a koala chlamydia ward named for John Oliver, the British comedian, down in Australia. So, yeah, do with that information.
I think the monkeys in Florida give you a whole new take on the phrase, my grandpa wasn't no monkey. No, was your girlfriend, apparently. Sorry.
Oof. At any rate, moving on.
I mean, we have to make... we have to say things like this because today's show is titled Degenerate Humans.
I guess you're right. Speaking of degeneration, we're on page 112.
We are.
Of Did Man Get Here by Evolution or by Creation? Oh, I forgot to say it. For any of you who are joining us for the first time, we are reading this book, Did Man Get Here by Evolution or by Creation, which was published in 1967. This book was gifted to me. And I'm using that word very loosely. And I read it back in high school and didn't think a whole lot about it. And then we did a couple of series where we trapped Dapper into talking about evolution and dinosaurs and all that sort of stuff. So now we're reading this book. And it's got the same arguments that creationists use today. Like, their arguments have not changed even slightly.
Well, no, we had one original. Remember?
Okay, we had one original, the infinite neuron. Yes.
That was one that I hadn't heard.
That's going to be my band name, the Infinite Neuron. So, yeah.
So Hovind does have something similar. He's got Matt Powell, the Infinite Moron. So
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. That's fair. We did on this channel. I think we did 2 videos where we responded to Matt Powell. Like, good Lord, that was 3 years ago, Peter. How does time exist?
Time flies. Time flies.
Time does fly. Tempus fugit, as it were. That would be a killer band name. Yes, Jamie E. The Infinite Neuron. So, all right, let's read. Turn your books to chapter 9, page 112, verse 32. And so it was said. Anyway, quote, as man.
Oh my God. Oh, sorry. I was just reacting to the image on the.
Like I said, 1967. Yeah. All right. As man, with his high brain capacity spread out over the earth, he developed separate cultures, some more advanced than others. Oof. This was due not to evolution, but to geography and changed languages. Genesis 11, chapter 11, verses 8 and 9. Was that my cat? I think that was my cat. The fact that some of the cultures degenerated into a Stone Age, as we see today in New Guinea, Africa, or among the Australian Aborigines, simply demonstrates that man's progress was not automatic, but could be reversed. Particularly is this so when we consider that the Bible states that man was created with a perfect mind and body, but because of rebellion against God, has been degenerating. Genesis 3, chapter 3, verse 19, and Romans chapter 5, verse 12.
It's going to be a painful chapter, isn't it?
Well, we only got like 3 pages left, so not that much left. The primitive men today are not in an earlier stage of evolution. Science is beginning to recognize. Science Year of 1966, reporting on a conference of anthropologists, said, quote, many of these so-called primitive peoples of the world today, most of the participants agreed, may not be so primitive after all. They suggested that certain hunting tribes in Africa, Central India, South America, and the Western Pacific are not relics of the Stone Age as had been previously thought, but instead are the wreckage of more highly developed societies forced through various circumstances to lead a much simpler, less developed life. Close quote. Okay, we'll talk about that in 1 second. Let me close the door because somebody doesn't know how to close the door behind him, Enzo.
So this is the part where we juggle? I mean, Jackson just takes off.
You'll be back.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
All right. So, first of all, begin. Degeneration. Let me flip back. Okay. Okay, so this is bizarre. This idea that this is bizarre that they are claiming that people like the New Guineans, for instance, had a more advanced culture, but have like
they believed that they were descended from Adam and Eve and who had apparently a better culture. I don't know. I don't know
right.
how.
And yet there's zero evidence that they
hold on. So
that they had a more advanced culture and then degenerated. Same with like the San tribes of Africa
Jackson,
and the Paraha of South America.
Haven't you heard Kent Hovind? I mean, Adam was created perfect. He could walk, talk, name all the animals, and get married first day. I mean, do you know anyone who can do that? I mean,
I don't know that actually. Very first day?
Yeah. Then you've got the boat building genius called Noah, who built a boat that even today, with the most modern equipment, we couldn't replicate because it would just break in two.
Yeah.
I mean, these were geniuses, all of them.
That's true. Dapper points out, if you think hunter-gatherers started out scattering from the Tower of Babel, that means all ethnic groups started out with a culture that built monumental architecture. Yeah, and you have to kind of wonder why they don't do it anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Fun fact.
But yeah, there's simply no...
Fun fact, we sometimes get a Christian, and I use that word very loosely, in the side chat called Jesus is Lord, and he has made the statement. Yeah. He has made the statement that the Tower of Babel was built by Neanderthals.
That's a take, all right.
It is.
But I think, like I've heard that many civilizations collapsed. Most often due to the collapse of agriculture. For example, in the Americas, you have like these big cities that were built, but then like a very, I think like a major shift in climate, foreshadowing happened, and and now and then after that they were mostly forced to live in a more or less hunter-gathering lifestyle because they couldn't rely on agriculture anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's entirely possible.
Although of course many groups still practice agriculture even before the arrival of the Europeans, because actually the Europeans learned how to farm corn and such from the Indians or the Native Americans, so whatever you want to, yeah.
Right. Also, Dapper points out that the Tower of Babel was built by Homo erectus because they erected the tower. I mean, that makes sense. That makes certainly makes sense to me. Yeah. So let's talk about this idea of calling cultures primitive and advanced. I kind of agree with Chomsky in saying that, like, yeah, cultures don't evolve in the correct sense of evolution; they change, right?
As it's same with evolution itself. Like evolution also doesn't progress towards a goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're not. They don't progress towards a goal as in the 1800s. You had the Western chauvinists who would say, like, oh, of course these cultures progress towards us. They want to be like Germany, or England or France. That's the end goal. That's where they're supposed to go. Which no, these cultures are just happy doing their hunter-gatherer thing, or being nomadic, or maybe like farming for one part of the year and then hunting or fishing for another part of the year, and doing that switch back and forth. Plenty of cultures are just happy doing that. They don't need to build cityscapes and live in apartments they can barely afford and things like that, So it's ridiculous.
What did the picture say, or the legend under that figure on the other page?
It says all races descended from the first man and woman. Some developed more highly than others, building on accumulated knowledge. Some progressed for a time, then retrogressed. Others eventually became extinct. And what's great about this is they are so white. Adam and Eve are so very white in this. They're like, I mean, good gravy. Yeah, just look at that. They're white.
Yeah. So
because of course they are. Jesus was white too,
If you look at the picture of Adam and Eve, there was one hell of a hairdresser in the Garden of Eden. I mean, look at that.
Right. Apparently they had also razors, and because they're very cleanly shaved.
Yeah, because no beards. None of them have beards.
I mean, if you
and obviously
if you think about it, they're in the Garden of Eden, like she could have had spiders like do her hair up or something like that, right?
I like it.
Wait, hold on a second. I just noticed something. Peter, your version, the guy doesn't have a beard. In my version, he does.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yes. No, no joke. Look at this. My dude has a beard. Your dude doesn't.
That one does have a beard. Adam has a beard, and in this version,
Adam does not have a beard.
Which is the older version?
Yeah, I mean, fashions change over time, Jackson. The only thing that doesn't change is on the bottom, the second from the right. You can see the atheist struggling there with a piece of rock. That's your degenerate human being right there. I mean, obviously an atheist.
Clearly, yeah.
Dapper says that the Peters must be the newer version because
Schrodinger's beard. Yes,
the JWs decided.
The Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses. All right.
Because this book was written by Watchtower, or published by Watchtower at the very least. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, I guess they decided beards were bad. So yeah, the culture does not progress towards any particular direction. It's not about going from hunter-gatherer to Western, European or North American. There is a huge variety of cultures, and they're happy doing their own things. It's kind of like evolution. There is no necessity for organisms to go from simple to complex.
Of course, people may decide for themselves what style of life they want to choose, but then that's up to them. It's not like an inherent desire or objective, ideal, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is Yeah, the idea that these people that there are primitive people is long debunked. I'm pretty sure it was debunked by the 1960s, so I think they're kind of trying to pull from like a way earlier argument. So anyway, anything we want to add on that? Are we ready for the next page?
Well, I just wanted to add, we do have primitive people still today. We call them young Earth creationists, but they are still around.
That's true.
Well, funny thing is that we have learned, like in our recent script, we have learned that the creationist understanding of literature is always decades behind.
It's always in a more primitive state relative to today.
Yeah.
There, it's like the gravity at Answers in Genesis is like so much stronger, and that's why like time moves so much more slowly.
They're in a gravity well.
Yes, they're in a gravity well.
Very deep gravity.
They're in Russell Humphrey's white hole. It makes sense now. That's why they're in so far in the past, because there's such strong gravity, because it's the white hole theory.
I thought that was because they were gravitating around an evangelical financial black hole. I mean,
oh no, I get it. They are so dense. That's what creates the heavy gravitational force.
They generate their own gravity
because of how dense they are.
Yes, I believe it.
That makes me wonder why there are not more people in Repton, Alabama. That must be one of the densest places on the entire planet.
Entirely possible, yeah.
Dinosaur Adventureland, yeah.
You know what would be funny? The gravitational anomaly maps that you see. You can see like on Earth, you see gravitational anomalies where some places it's stronger gravity. We found like a meme version of it where you see the density of creationists basically
right.
on the map.
Yeah, that would make sense. Alrighty, page 114. Quote. Turn the page. There you go. This quote, the same observation is noted in connection with languages. Man's degeneration from perfection, as described in the Bible, should be shown in his languages. In the September 3rd, 1955 Science newsletter, the following comments regarding this point appear. Quote, there are no primitive languages, declares Dr. Mason, who is a specialist on American languages. The idea that savages, speak in a series of grunts and are unable to express...
To be fair, that like the quote has savages in... Sorry.
Many civilized concepts is very wrong. Quote, in fact, many of the languages of non-literate peoples are far more complex than modern European ones, Dr. Mason said. Evolution in language, Dr. Mason has found, is just the opposite of biological evolution. Languages have evolved from the complex to the simple, close quote. The same thought is expressed by evolutionist Ashley Montagu in his book, Man, His First Million Years. Quote, many primitive languages are often a great deal more complex and more efficient than the languages of the so-called higher civilizations, close quote. From such facts, we must conclude that any so-called prehistoric men, if they were Homo sapiens at all, were simply offshoots of humankind who lived contemporaneously with men who were like us today. These branches became separated ethnically and geographically from the main streams of humanity. They made little or no progress, or actually retrogress, and eventually died out. And we'll stop there because the next goes on to the next page. Okay, all right, Nestling, shoot.
Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, it's fine. Shoot.
You reacted to the savages, but it was in quotation marks. So I think the original author meant it in a facetious way.
Yes. No, It there was one other time like that. They said a word that I'm not comfortable with saying on camera. No, actually, they said two words, both of which I'm not comfortable saying on camera, like back to back in the same sentence. And I was like, I'm not going to say those. But you're right. Yeah, it's like tongue in cheek. even still, just seeing it like in a sentence referential to a group of people is still like, okay.
I'm a bit confused about this page because like it cites scientists saying like, oh, you don't have so-called primitive languages, that they aren't primitive at all. And then the author of the book concludes, therefore all the other humans are extinct, or because they degenerated. And like the evidence does not support that conclusion. Like I don't know what he's going at.
There have been very many points in this book where that has been the case. They'll say something like, they'll take like a fragment of a quote out of context and then like draw a sweeping conclusion from it. And we actually had Jamie E, who has found us several of those. It'll be like, Australopithecus africanus was not our direct ancestor. And we're like, well, yeah, we agree with that. And the book says, therefore, there are no human ancestors in the fossil record. It's like, that's not what they're saying. They're saying this one specific fossil is not our ancestor. That does not mean we don't have ancestors. It's not what that means.
Way to jump the shark.
Vandalia 1998 for $9.99 says, so are there any YEC claims that are younger than 5 years? The last big one I still hear them claiming is the soft dinosaur tissue one, and that's over 10 years old now.
I don't know. Only new. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this is what you were going for. The only way any of their claims are new is that they're making the same old argument, but with reference to new finds. So if we find a new like whale transitional fossil, they'll say it's not a transitional fossil, but it's the same argument. What do you think?
Yeah, same. Yeah. Or like I was also saying like the irreducible complexity argument, but they find a new poster boy for that one. Yeah. First exactly. It was the flagellum, and then it was the ATP synthase for a while, and then it was
something eyeball else, or bird wings or whatever. It's always something.
The soft tissue from dinosaurs, that is actually kind of weird that they're using that, because on the one hand they claim, well, evolutionists can't publish anything that would confirm the biblical account of creation, and now you've got soft tissue in dinosaurs, which apparently confirms creation because it can be millions of years old, yet it's published. So,
well, I think I feel like they think scientists are like in denial, like they're grappling for any explanation they possibly can posit to avoid, just accepting that God is real and the Earth is actually 10,000 years old. Like I feel like that's what creationists kind of
the ones who are
scientists.
In denial on this are the young Earth creationists. I mean, if you watch Kent Hovind and Matt Powell, they will tell you that they found red blood cells, actual red blood cells, and dinosaur DNA even. I've heard that too.
Oh, Eric Hovind said that like they found that paleontologists found a bleeding dinosaur carcass at one point. He said that, and it's like, that's insane. Yeah. It's not that you got it wrong, like because what is it? Mary Schweitzer says like, well, these look like the remains of like blood vessels, because what remains is like the iron from the heme molecule. But like, okay, that's one thing. If you misread that and you say, oh, they found actual like red blood cells, that's one thing. But saying paleontologists found a bleeding dinosaur carcass, you're just lying.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could have read that would give you that impression. You're just lying,
It doesn't
and these things had to be like, first the fossil had to be like put in an acid, and then the remains, the little tiny remains had to be rehydrated in order to be like
Yes.
malleable, and then they had to put it under a microscope in order to see the quote-unquote red blood cells. And now you're
Right.
saying, oh, they found a bleeding fossil. No.
You're
Like,
right.
it's-
That was something I forgot to add. Yeah, that's a good point. It had to be put in acid for days so they could like
Yeah.
take all the different minerals from the soil off of it before they could actually manipulate it. And you're right, it's like micrometers in length. You can't see this with the naked eye.
Yeah, if you looked at the fossil itself, just with your naked eye, it would look like any ordinary fossil.
Right.
You couldn't tell a difference between that.
Smitty makes a good point though. Cats leave bleeding dinosaur carcasses as presents.
Okay,
So,
fair. Non-avian dinosaurs. You got me there.
Yes.
Non-avian dinosaurs. But you're right. And what was interesting about it is it raises the question, if we found this on, this one fossil, how many times have we overlooked it in the past? And that's a fair question. That's a perfectly fair point to make, because it's entirely possible we missed it many times before. Because previously the thinking was, right, that these things shouldn't exist at all beyond like a million years or so, maybe a couple million years. But now we know that these proteins in a highly diagenetically processed state, very highly, so not much of it remains.
They are cross-linked and such.
Yeah, it's cross-linked and all this. So yeah, under some very interesting circumstances, you can find itty-bitty remains of this stuff. And that's interesting, and we should definitely look for more stuff like that. But the creationists don't care about that. They don't care about the actual implications of any of this. They just want to turn it into an argument for creationism because that's all they're good for. So
if creationists were the same way against evolution as they are against like physics, they would have said, oh, the orbit of Mercury is slightly different than what we expect from Newtonian mechanics, therefore all physics is wrong.
Right, exactly. Going to the and I would love to have Dapper here to talk about this because he's our resident language theropod. He points out complexity and efficiency are basically impossible to measure in languages. And see, I didn't know that, so that's very interesting. But
well, maybe you can have like maybe word count number or something. I don't know, maybe estimating how many words they use.
Yeah.
Or, I wouldn't be knowing. Like Dapper knows more about linguistics than I do, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about linguistics, but that is a very interesting point.
And you don't have to have a complex language to have it be efficient. I mean, meerkats talk. Meerkats can warn each other there's a human coming with a yellow shirt. So they can't distinguish the sex, but they can tell you there's a human coming in a yellow shirt. And they will look for a human in a yellow shirt. So that's not really complex. It just sounds.
I think also,
but it's really efficient.
Dapper would be. But I also think that Dapper would know that, for example, the designed languages like Klingon and the Elf language from Lord of the Rings, they are pretty simple. I would think, because they are designed languages, right? Because they are like really streamlined, have very basic rules of grammar and not very messy rules. Like Dutch, for example, has really messy rules when it comes to language.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Language is very interesting. We talk about language or the evolution of language or language capabilities in the Ergast tale, which is one of our ancestors' tale videos. But we don't talk a whole lot about it, mostly because language doesn't fossilize. I think we talked about this in the last episode. But language doesn't fossilize, so we kind of are left with like sort of phylogenetic bracketing sort of stuff. Like all modern humans have the same capacity for language. You could take someone out of Papua New Guinea and raise them in New York, and they would speak just like everybody else. And vice versa. You could take a New Yorker, drop them off in Papua New Guinea, and they would learn the language. Like we all have the same capacity for language. So the So language, as we are capable of doing it, evolved before our last common ancestor, right? So some like,
oh dear,
what, like 100,000 years ago?
Oh dear.
Or no, that's more like 70,000 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh no, I'm referring
The
to
common ancestor of all modern humans.
I'm referring to the common ancestor of all young Earth creationists just showed up.
Anyway, I don't know. But regardless,
But
yeah, the idea that like languages just like degrade over time is also very strange to me. It seems to say like they don't add words or add grammar rules or stuff like that. Like they only lose words and grammar rules, and I just don't understand that. I really don't.
Well, that is actually interesting. In Dutch, you have two versions of the. Like we have like Peter, we have de and het for as the words before nouns. But there's actually a push towards dropping one of them. So we have only one version of the, and we use the same for every single word. It's like in French where you have le and la for feminine and masculine words, right? But then in Dutch you have these other words. Now
in German,
they are arguing for why don't we have only one? Yeah.
In German you have three. You have male, female, and non-descriptive.
Neuter. And neuter, yeah.
Yeah. So. And language is weird anyway. Blokkadelater, and probably no American can say that as fast as I can. Said meerkat is stokstaartje, and that's correct. The weird thing is, so the meerkat in Dutch is a sticktail.
Sticktail.
We call it a sticktail, yeah.
I mean, it does have a stick tail, like, you know.
Yeah, many animal names in Dutch is just freaking weird. Like it's like, for example, do you know how we call the platypus? Bird beak animal. Bird animal.
Yeah.
Bird beak animal. A single word, no spaces between. A single word, bird beak animal.
Bird beak animal. I like that.
At least you know what you're talking about. It's an animal with a bird beak.
That's true. There aren't very many of those, fortunately. But Peter, we should have a linguist on sometime. I think I was talking about that with Dapper the other day about how we should have like a linguist on.
I think we talked about this off air last time.
You and I did.
Yeah,
yes.
I had a guy on Twitter who was absolutely brilliant, who was studying this, made it his life's work, studying languages and the evolution of languages over time. And I really wish I could get in touch with that guy again, because that to me, that was so fascinating, what he knew about languages and how it worked and how it shifted from...
And what's one of the things that's really interesting about language, at least in my opinion, is like, to what extent is like language wrapped up as part of, or is like inseparable from what we consider consciousness? Because there seems to be a link there between consciousness and language, right?
There's a good talk by V.S. Ramachandran. Like he also talked about how language and how metaphorical thinking has to do with our unique, apparently a unique ability to have like semantics, for example. Yeah, right.
Right, and
it's also connected to our perception of color. Like there is a really interesting case of a blind person having. What's called how do you call it again? By your senses are mixed up.
Oh, synesthesia.
Synesthesia, yeah. Like there's a blind person who has synesthesia, so they can see or hear colors, and they describe it as Martian color. So it's really weird how he can still see colors and yet he can't see.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. I really do wonder because I really enjoy listening to like Noam Chomsky and other linguists talk about language and stuff, because it's one extremely complicated stuff, and I have a hard time keeping up with some of it, but also the implications of a lot of it are fascinating. It really makes you wonder how many of our processes that we sort of take for granted are all kind of tied up together and are like dependent on each other. Because like, for instance, I'm perfectly fine with saying that language as we humans have it is unrivaled among animals. We are capable of doing this process where we make up these sentences that, yes, have a certain structure, but like are capable of like extending indefinitely, basically, right? There are no animals that can do that. No other animals, I should say, that are alive today that can do that. All the other animals that do make sounds, they have these very like strict static sounds that they make. They're not dynamic sounds. They don't, like a bird whistle. Birds make a certain this one species of bird makes a certain type of whistle, whereas this other species of bird makes a different type of whistle, but they don't like have variable whistles, right? And it's the same with bat cries and with like monkeys. Monkeys may have different words for like leopard versus eagle versus snake, but that's about it, right? They just have a set of like nouns essentially that they refer to things. And interestingly, the yellow-casqued hornbill can actually hear some of these sounds and differentiate them. And so when the monkeys say like eagle, well, that's going to give her one reaction as opposed to the sound for like leopard or something like that. And so there is that the sort of cross-linguistic between them.
And it's like many animals can learn associations between certain sounds and the object. Like we can teach dogs to retrieve certain objects. Like there's a very famous smart dog. I think it's called Einstein, the dog. I think, if I'm not mistaken. Like maybe something. Never mind. Like if you ask them to retrieve one object, they will go into a pile of toys and specifically pick that object. To give to you, yeah.
But there's also points out. There's also from my first girlfriend, my in-laws had a parrot, and that parrot used to joke with the dog. If the parrot saw the dog in the back of the garden, it would yell the dog's name, and then the dog would come storming in, and the parrot would laugh. That has. So you have to have some kind of correlation in, first of all, doing that,
right,
and then making the sound for a laugh, knowing that you fooled the dog.
Right.
I always found that fascinating, and there are more examples of parrots not just learning words, but stringing together a sentence with a meaning.
Right.
So. I think the more we delve into what animals actually do, we're going to be surprised that language, we might be the pinnacle when it comes to language, but there could be a whole gradient across the planet.
Absolutely.
Among certain animals.
No, I agree with you on that. Right. There's going to be a gradient in terms of what animals are capable of doing, and then there's what we do. And I absolutely agree with that. Chomsky makes the interesting point, and maybe he's right, maybe he's not, I don't know. But he seems to think that the origin of language itself was something, or well, not necessarily the origin of language. The capacity for doing language that we have was something rather simple, because you have clearly representative art and stuff like that before a certain time period, right? And then we have much more complex art and stuff, right? And tool usage and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, clearly we have very simple tool usage and very simple art and that sort of stuff. And it goes on for a long while. And then we develop more sophisticated tools and art and stuff. And then it kind of takes off. And so maybe, well, he argues, maybe there was a relatively simple change that occurred in our brain, like some processes got linked metabolically or something, and that's what allowed for us to do that. What I would say was probably involved was exaptation, probably, because that's what often happens with evolutionary novelty. You take things, structures, processes that were already doing something, but then they, as you adapt them, they reach a certain point where they're now capable of doing something else, and they can become co-opted for that new purpose. So we know, like, our tetrapod limbs, for instance, are descended from fins, right? Fish didn't have to involve a whole new set of paired appendages to crawl out of the water. No, they just rearranged the bones that they already had in their fins, as well as their shoulder and their neck and all this other stuff.
Well, one of my favorite in a way things that Matt Powell has said is he thinks that the legs of a chicken are its hands and the wings are like new limbs, apparently.
That's something. I can't. I don't know what else to say other than that something.
I love it how he thinks that chickens walk on their hands.
Two handstands.
Yeah.
Two handstands.
He's a special one. He's a special one. I'll give him that. Is there anything else we want to say regarding
one thing? I bit my tongue several times, and I'm still going to say it. So we have Otangelo in the chat, and he says speech demands extraordinary fine and rapid motor control. Otangelo, we've heard you speak. You shouldn't touch that topic. Honestly.
That's
don't.
Dang.
Shots fired.
All right.
Well, I want two more interesting things to say. Like there is an interesting thing about how about the color perception. Like depending on your language, you divide the color spectrum in different ways, and some people are able to distinguish some shades of colors better than others, depending on your language. It's really fascinating.
Right. There's that one. Yeah. Isn't there like a tribe in Africa that like can distinguish more shades of blue?
I think it's green. I think
or green. Maybe it's green.
It's green.
You're right.
Russian it has two colors for blue or two shades. Yeah. Yeah.
The weird thing. The weird thing with the colors is also, so if you talk with someone from the UK, they have names for colors. So they don't say it's a dark red, it's burgundy, and they have and it's maroon, and so they have all these names for colors that are just baked into the language. They don't say the color itself. They say the name for the color, and so they can distinguish in speech a lot more colors than we can. We can say light blue or a dark blue or a light red or a dark red. In UK English, all of that has names, and so for those people, it's a lot easier to describe something in color because they can refer to all these names, and pretty much everyone in the country will know what they're talking about. Which it's kind of similar to the tribe that can distinguish, I think, several dozens of colors of green, which is, and if I'm not mistaken, they've got one color that they can't see. They will call that blue. One color of green, which is also a weird thing.
Yeah. But one last thing I want to mention is like there's an interesting etymology about the one word for God. Like that in Latin the word for God is Deus, which shares the same etymology as the name Zeus for the Greek god, and also the same for Jupiter, the Roman god. And when you trace it back to the Proto-Indo-European ancestor, you have what's called Deus Pater, which means Sky Father, basically. That's where that that's where God, or at least one name for God, comes from. Skyfather.
Sky Daddy.
Sky Daddy.
Yes.
And they get so
I'm
annoyed when you say
like
that.
Oh, I'm aware of stuff like that too. With like the word like in Latin is rex for king. In French it's roi, and then in Indian it's what is it, like Raj, right? But it's the same root for all of these words for
Right.
Latin and French and Indian. It's the same root, which goes back to the Proto-Indo-European language, however many thousands of years ago. Which, yeah, that's another really cool subject, which we didn't touch on it because, like, the Ancestors Tale series kind of skips time periods. It's not just like going back the whole time. We sort of do a skip with our times, so we don't get to cover everything. But yeah, that would be an interesting subject to touch on in a future video, maybe. So, but we'll see. Okay. Anything else you want to add on this section? Are we ready for the last page of this chapter?
Sure.
Go to the last page.
All right. All right. Quote, of this, the Encyclopedia Britannica of 1966 says, quote, in the early days of paleoanthropological discovery, Homo neanderthalensis was commonly assumed to represent the ancestral type from which Homo sapiens derived. But the accumulation of further discoveries made it clear that these apparently primitive features are secondary, the result of a retrogressive evolution from still earlier types which do not appear to be specifically distinguishable from Homo sapiens. Thus, the specialized Neanderthal type of Homo seems to have been preceded by a more generalized type. The brain of this specialized type was surprisingly rather large, for the mean cranial capacity actually exceeded that of modern human races, close quote. That the degenerative effects of Adam's rebellion upon all his descendants cannot be eliminated by man is becoming more clear. In the New York Times of October 30, 1966, the article Medicine, the Mystery of Why We Grow Old states, quote, at the moment, efforts to lengthen the lifespan seem to have broken down. It is now generally agreed that no single factor is involved in aging. The conquest of cancer, heart disease, and the like will not lead to a dramatic increase in the lifespan. Too many weaknesses are built into the human frame to be overcome, close quote. Evolutionist Rostand similarly stated, quote, if we take into account only the facts of hereditary variation which occurred in mankind, it seems that mankind must fear decadence rather than anticipate progress, close quote. All the facts that science has uncovered verify the Bible's account of man's degeneration. The Bible record states that man was created perfect, but because of rebelling against his maker, began degenerating. His sin caused a 6,000-year-long decline morally and physically. The depths to which man has sunk are evident from the morally depraved condition of society today, and it is not improving, but is getting worse, close quote. Okay, I have so much to say here.
Well, okay, so if they had
Mhm.
the U.S. in mind, and specifically the Christians, and more specifically the evangelical Christians, they might be right. It's getting worse.
I mean, that is possible. So first and foremost,
he was referencing to the Neanderthal brain,
yes, that's what I was
its skull being larger than ours, right? Yeah.
So actually, first, Homo Heidelbergensis is what we are both allegedly descended from, both us and Neanderthals, and it had a brain size, a cranial capacity was smaller than ours. So that's, I mean, again, it's not progress just because we have a larger cranial capacity than them. Evolution has no direction, so it's not progressing in any direction. It's just continuing to occur, right? The accumulation of further discoveries that these apparently primitive features are secondary. I don't know what that means. Like Neanderthals as well as Denisovans are our sister species, so they're not like primitive compared to us. I don't consider Neanderthals primitive. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Okay, of course, I don't consider anything primitive unless you define primitive as plesiomorphic.
Sure, yeah. Right. In a phylogenetic context, it has characteristics which are ancestral to us, right? But yeah,
so like our hands, compared to horse feet, our hands are plesiomorphic because we still retain 5 digits.
Right. Exactly.
But so if we are going to compare, then how far did modern men get as compared to Neanderthals? Because we did interbreed, so that to me that would look like that we were at that point fairly equal to each other. Because otherwise, why would you have interbred with each other? It wouldn't have made sense.
There's bestiality, Peter. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually.
And all of that,
who argue that though.
All of that is just God's fault, because He made Adam, and then He wanted Adam to have a mate, and then He showed Adam all these animals, and Adam rejected them. So here's this human who thinks bestiality might not be a good thing. And then you've got an all-knowing, omniscient, all-powerful God who thinks, well, let's see if he wants to mate with, I don't know, a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a cow or an ape. I mean, that's literally where the idea comes from. God invented bestiality. Adam just didn't fall for it.
Well, it didn't work out. He was trying it, but it didn't work.
Yeah, and and if you take the Bible literally, so if you look at, not literally, but if you read the Bible in the way that it is written, so Eve was made from Adam's side. All through the Bible, the side is mentioned more than once, and it also always refers to genitalia. And if you think
it's a common euphemism,
if you think about it, some monkeys have a baculum, humans don't.
Right.
So what was Eve made out of? There you go.
The baculum.
It wasn't a rib. And there are actually, I think there are Jewish scholars who think that might have been the case.
Yes, there's a paper. Yeah, there's a paper that's co-authored by, it's like a rabbinic scholar and a biologist, and they talk about that the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like in Neanderthal skulls.
What is Degenerate? What are you talking about? The debate between Jackson and Lane is good. What does that mean?
He was just talking to me about something in abiogenesis, like unrelated to this. But
okay. Is that
I want to mention about
someone's last name?
Is it, no. It's someone else. Jackson is someone else.
Okay, I was like that has to be someone's last name, right? Because I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Bas Jackson. It's Bas Jackson, not Jackson.
Okay. Well, continue what you were saying.
But also, like, even though Neanderthals had larger brain volume, I think their hindbrain was larger, but not their forebrain. Like our forebrain, it's like we have like a very low, because we have a large forebrain. We don't have the brow ridge, right? That's
right.
why we don't have brow. Yeah.
Right, and the thing about brow ridges is they like come and go. They've come in and gone out with human evolution multiple times. There's also
depends on how large your forehead is, right? Because if your forehead is really bigger, then you have less pronounced brow ridges. Yeah,
it's the same with like skin tones. You know, in humans, like going from light to dark and back again has happened many times as humans have gone from like equatorial Africa, then up north into Eurasia, and then back down south into like Mexico. Like it's this color changes happen many times over and over again. So yeah. So the thing about the lifespans. So also isn't it like we've increased our lifespan by like, what is it, 2 years every decade at least, or something like that?
Actually, there's in the recent book by Nick Lane, coincidentally also mentioned in the chat by Desert Waves, but Nick Lane has in his recent book I think he mentioned that we haven't actually made much progress in the last decades with extending our age. Now maybe average life expectancy, but how old people can get.
Right. I guess I mean the typically life expectancy has raised, right?
Average life expectancy, because more people don't die young, basically.
Right. The actual lifespan of humans has not greatly increased, but the life expectancy of humans has increased by several years over the each decade or per decade. Right. So like so I feel like that's kind of what is being missed here. But also why we grow old was known since the 50s. Like Hamilton and the other biologists kind of worked this out in the 50s. By the 60s it was already known why we grow old. There are a couple different things. They're like antagonistic pleiotropy is one of the ideas. So basically you have mutations you have alleles basically that are fine when you're young, right? But once you get past breeding age, basically, there's nothing to select against these alleles from acting on you later in life. So there's that like relaxed selection pressure. That's one of the reasons. And there's other ones like over
there's
time
also finish up. If you want to finish, sorry for interrupting.
It's fine. I was just gonna say like also the wear and tear from like doing these metabolic processes is also part of it. But yeah, that was just what I was gonna say. All right, go ahead.
In the same book, Nick Lane also argues for something else. If I understood this idea properly, don't quote me, but if I understood correctly, he says that you have the mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA, and basically in our bodies, the mitochondrial DNA mutates more rapidly than the nuclear DNA, and because the proteins in the mitochondria are composed of proteins that are encoded by the nuclear DNA, and some are coded by the mitochondrial DNA. And because one is mutating faster than the other one, they can't keep up with each other, and that's why you have and that's why for example, the electron transport chain is being slowed down increasingly as you age, and so you have more oxidative stress and all the associated effects of that. And that's one reason why we age, and that's also one reason why we have sex, because sex mixes the DNA up, and also it selects only one mitochondria from one parent, and that's how this process is prevented from generation to generation. It doesn't prevent in a single lifetime because you don't do sex within your own life cycle, of course, and that's why you age. Right. That's his idea.
Well, that would also, I think, fall under that idea of antagonistic pleiotropy. You basically have there's nothing stopping like your nuclear DNA and your mitochondrial DNA from racking up mutations, because that selective pressure decreases, it basically vanishes as soon as you've had your offspring, right? So as long as you have alleles that let you stave off that process until after you've had your offspring, there's nothing stopping it. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That falls under sort of that same idea. So yeah, I absolutely agree. That sounds fine. There are organisms, however, who beat aging essentially. Testudines are members of that group, where you essentially you don't have a correlation between like how long these organisms have lived and how many offspring they have or when they die, etc.
Although Nick Lane has also an answer to that, because he says that such creatures manage the metabolism, specifically the electron transport chain, because they have very slow metabolism, and therefore they age very, very slowly. And in other examples, for example, in birds and bats, they have very efficient metabolism. Their mitochondria and nuclear DNA, they match so closely that they can live for a much longer time than we can.
Yeah.
And that's his idea, basically.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and there are other like plants, for instance, or there are some plants that don't show signs of aging, like most angiosperms don't show signs of aging. So yeah, stuff like that. Aging is a very interesting process. Actually, fun fact, the aquarium just this year participated in a study on aging in testudines. So the aquarium where I work, because we contribute data on our different animals to different databases. And so one of the databases just happened to be used for a study this year. And so I thought that was really neat. I read the paper on it. It was real cool. So is that
Speaking about aging and aquaria, I mean, so how's Darwin?
Good. He's hanging out over there.
Yes. So Darwin stopped aging before I think even before he hit puberty, if I'm not correct. And so recently,
one of the processes has ceased. Yeah.
Yeah, recently, our dear friend Dr. Kent Hovind did a show on how he has a new series called Making Babies. It's just makes me vomit a little bit inside my mouth every single time he says that. But he did an entire show on axolotls. And so, have you seen that by any chance, Jackson?
I don't watch anything he puts out. I have zero desire whatsoever to watch
there
anything
was
that
so much wrong. I don't know an awful lot about axolotls, but I couldn't count the mistakes that he made in his video and the things that he got wrong in his video. It's mind-boggling. But he's got a new way of making content. He will let people write what he needs to say on the show. So basically, everyone can contribute, and Hovind will read it out as if it was real science.
Fair enough. The thing about axolotls is, interestingly, we don't know, or the geneticists don't seem to know what the exact genetic reason is that they do neoteny, but the reason is, the hormonal reason is, they don't produce the hormones like thyroxine and triiodothyronine, which they typically produce, which is what triggers their metamorphosis. That's what happens in basically all other amphibians, like frogs, salamanders. They produce these hormones, they meet their appropriate receptors, and this triggers the process. Well, for whatever reason, axolotls just don't produce those hormones. They still have the receptors. So they haven't lost the receptors. They've just lost the ability to make those hormones. And that's why if you put iodine, which is one of the main compounds in these hormones, if you put iodine in their water, it actually makes them undergo metamorphosis, which don't do, by the way, if you're listening and you have an axolotl, don't do that. It will kill them.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, they don't handle that, no.
Yeah, they're not supposed to do it. Yeah, they will not handle it very well.
It's also interesting that's like you have some relatives of the axolotl who are facultative neotics, that they, based on some environmental cues, they will go either way, basically.
So even technically, axolotls can metamorphose. Wild ones can. So wild axolotls can metamorphose. What in effect has happened is, because everybody wants axolotls, there are so many in the aquarium trade, and there has been a selection for axolotls that don't metamorphose. So they're in, and they actually carry specific alleles. I think it's anemia is one of the names of the alleles. But so there are these particular alleles that cause the axolotls to never metamorphose. And those are very frequent in the aquarium hobby because we breed axolotls. There are way more axolotls, I'm sure, in captivity than there are in Lake Xochimilco over in Mexico.
Now I'm curious. So I read somewhere that all of the axolotls in captivity came from a very tiny group in France.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Where they started breeding them, and I think I read that there were only 6, but at least it sounds kind of weird that they could breed that many axolotls from just 6 original ancestors.
I mean, so I wouldn't be surprised if they got more from the wild. But I mean, if you have a population, maybe they're all just super inbred. And that's why
the captivity ones tend to be like really white, right? And then
yes,
the
that's
wild
another
ones
one.
are like
Yeah, the in the wild they're typically like sort of like black to brownish.
Yeah,
but in captivity
almost camouflaged, basically. Yeah.
Yes, and in captivity you have an extremely high proportion of the population that has the albinism or leucism. And they come in different colors. Like there are black ones, there are ones with gold speckles. There's a lot of different colors in the hobby also. And so that could be from, selecting particular lines for particular colors and all that sort of stuff. So it's not super surprising to me, but
it's also interesting about the hormonal change that even a single or maybe one single, maybe several hormonal change can have such a drastic effect on basically the morphology and even the physiology of the organism. And basically there is an interesting paper that argues for that the axolotl is an example of a Goldschmidt hopeful monster, basically. Even though
I've heard that.
Even though that idea has been really dragged through the mouth, even by scientists and creationists alike. So it may have some credence in some specific examples to it, but yeah.
Sure. I mean, I would even say like polyploidy is a macromutation, right?
Right.
If you do a whole genome duplication, I'd definitely say that's a macromutation, which can cause speciation. So I'm fine with that. Like I'm fine with macromutations. I don't know. Maybe my definition is a bit more lax than in technical papers. I don't know, but that seems fine with me. So yeah, definitely. Okay, is there anything else we want to say on this page before we move on to chapter 10?
No, I have nothing anymore.
Okay.
All right.
Dessel Dre says Lane also argues for understanding the endosymbiosis event with mitochondria as a hopeful monster. Sure, I can see that. Oh, it's just this argument again. Oh, it's just the everything is complex argument again, which we've done before multiple times in this book.
Complexity.
Yes, exactly. Like, listen to this. Just literally one sentence. The body is the ultimate in technological perfection. Like
technological complexion.
It's your need, therefore.
Yeah, that's what this is. Evolutionists have no satisfactory explanation for the marvelous purposive. That's a word I've not heard before. I've heard purposeful, but not purposive.
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 I thought you were saying purposes, like plural. Like maybe.
No,
yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard that word before. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah, this is boring. This is the same crap that we've already covered. Stuff looks cool, therefore God. I don't care. Boring. Oh, it actually has on page. Peter, can you bring up page 118, please?
118.
Because 118, yes, sir. There's a picture on it. I want to show off.
Please do the juggle because my loan has expired.
Oh, you lost the thing. Okay. So there's a picture on page 118 that Peter's about to pull up, and it is an embryo it's a very curious picture of an embryo in utero. And so, fun fact about placental development. So there are special cells involved in the transmission of nutrients from the mother to the developing offspring that are called syncytiotrophoblasts, which is a terribly long word. But these, oh, I mean, I get it. I get that it's a word. That's just a weird word. I've never heard it or used it. So syncytiotrophoblasts, what they do is they pass nutrients back and forth from the mother to the juvenile, and I would assume waste also from the juvenile back to the mother. So what's cool about it is the proteins that are used in these syncytiotrophoblasts are actually derived from a virus, from an endogenous retrovirus. So what you have to wonder is, could God have made the placenta without using viral DNA? And if God is omnipotent, then yeah, obviously God could, but God chose specifically not to. God chose to make a placenta that uses viral DNA. Now what's interesting about this virus.
It's almost like it's almost like he's like a scientist making humans as GMOs.
I mean,
right? Jackson, exactly. It's like there's no.
It's just God showing off. You don't get it. This is how they attribute things to God, because he's showing off by doing things that you wouldn't expect. And then on the other hand, he just made all mammals and fish have the exact same bone structure as we see everywhere else in nature. It's sometimes he shows off and sometimes he doesn't.
Right. But God wanted to use an ERV that he put in a bunch of other primates, but in a few primates he decided, hey, I'm going to turn this into a usable protein because reasons. We did a whole video on suboptimal design on our channel. One of the other examples that is commonly talked about is the recurrent laryngeal nerve, because there's a nerve, and I believe we've probably talked about it on this series. There's a nerve that goes from your brain to your larynx, but it doesn't go straight from your brain to your larynx. It goes all the way down, loops under your aorta, and then goes back up. So it's like 7 times as long as it needs to be. So you have to ask, why? Why does it do that? And the argument from creationists is, well, that's just the way you develop. Well, okay, that is the way we develop, but why is that the way we develop? And I have not seen a response to that.
Kicking the can down the road, so to speak.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's there's no reason that we would have to do that. There's no reason that I mean, really, just like when you compare gene phylogenies for like genes that are distributed across a wide group of organisms. So like the Hox genes that are involved in limb development are also involved in fin development. Why?
Right.
Why would you use the same genes? Why not make some different ones?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting thing about the invertebrates. We have like 4 sets of Hox genes. Well, many other animals have only one set, and this indicates that vertebrates underwent 2 rounds of whole genome duplication, and I believe 2 sets of Hox genes of the 4 are mainly used in limb development in vertebrates. So basically, that is how we got the quote-unquote information for limb development, by duplicating these Hox clusters. Yeah,
exactly. When we had our video back and forth with Long Story Short, which he'll be back in the near future, don't you worry, guys. When we had our whole video response series to him, one of the things we pointed out was that this was the one about homology, because he just does not seem to grasp, or I'm sure he still doesn't, the concept of a nested hierarchy. We pointed out, okay, if God is omnipotent, he can do whatever the heck he wants. Evolution can only do one set of things. It can only produce a nested hierarchy. God can produce any sort of pattern for organismal relatedness or unrelatedness. They don't have to be related. He could create every species individually. But there's only one pattern that evolution can do, and that's the nested hierarchy. What is the one pattern that exists for organismal diversity? The nested hierarchy. And so you have to ask, okay, why would God create the one design that evolution can do? Why not do literally anything else? And they're like, oh, well, it's because God's like a designer. He's reusing parts.
If you have one hypothesis that allows for a few results, that's and that result was vindicated, that's a good hypothesis. But if you have a hypothesis that can account for literally any situation that you can think of, that's a useless hypothesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine that humans would do the same thing and make cars out of boat parts and airplanes out of boat parts. See how far that will get you. I mean,
right.
And
that's there are many examples of jury rigging in life forms, right?
I like Richard Dawkins' book, Climbing Mount Improbable, is one of my favorite books on evolution. And one of the things he points out is, if you look at insect eyes, now creationists love talking about eyes. I'm sorry. They love talking about eyes. Because
vertebrate eyes only.
Right. Only vertebrate eyes, only the camera eye, basically. And we talked about how camera eyes work, and it's all just electrical signals and all that sort of stuff in the Howler Monkey's Tale. So, however, insect eyes are extraordinarily inefficient. And the reason is, so with our eyes, our retina is concave. But with insect eyes, their retina is convex. So what they have is their eyes are like tubes. It's like a bunch of little tubes on a convex surface. What that means is each ommatidium. There we go.
Each little eye.
Each little eye, which is called an ommatidium, can only see a very tiny picture. So their brain has to take all of the different pictures that the eyes are bringing, the ommatidia are bringing in.
It's like the worst cell phone camera you can think of, like the cell phone camera from like the early 2000s or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Each one can only take a teeny tiny picture of the actual image, and the brain has to put all of that into a functional representation of reality. It's horribly inefficient. It's so inefficient that there's a group of isopods, or maybe, no, I think it was amphipods, sorry. There's a group of these amphipods, and this lineage became deep water. So they basically lost most of their ommatidia. Their eyes are super reduced. But the cool thing is, this lineage, a lineage within this group is starting to go back up in the water column. So, do you know what type of eye they built on top of their compound eye?
I can guess, but I would like to hear you say it.
No, guess. Take a guess.
More like an eye that we have, a camera type eye.
A camera eye on top of their compound eye. It's called Ampeliska. I'll put that in our side chat. Ampeliska.
Oh, look, little papa.
So
someone woke up.
Oh, doggy.
Someone woke up.
Doge. Little Doge.
But their eyes are so hilariously inefficient. And with evolution, as we all know, can't go back to the drawing board. Evolution can't start over and say, yeah, we're going to get rid of this whole compound eye thing. It's not really working out for us. We're going to just put some camera eyes on these dragonflies or whatever. Evolution can't do that. Once you've got it, you have to stick with it. It can't go anywhere.
Basically, what this arthropod does is like it put on spectacles on top of its.
Yes, it has eyes, it formed a lens and a vitreous mass over It's compound eye. It's highly reduced compound eye.
Oh, a single compound eye.
It's like it's three little like teeny tiny compound eyes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because they were
yeah.
So they like reducing their eyes because they were in the deep ocean. So from however long, hundreds of thousands or millions of years, they've been reducing their eyes. But now as this lineage is starting to go back up in the water column where there is light, they need their eyes again. So they're evolving an eye, making an eye on top of an eye to try to help see better. And of course, they built a camera eye because it's way more efficient than trying to build another compound eye. So I just love that. I think that's hilarious. There's also a trilobite, which does something sort of similar to that, and that's called the Schizophrol Eye. And the group of trilobite... That's the
if I may, I have one comment about your example of Ampeliska. Like,
shoot,
it's almost like it went down, Mount Improbable, and then it climbed up another peak or another mountain, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do we know if those reduced eyes still have nerves and such? Yeah, they still see. They can still see. And so it turns out actually trilobites or some trilobites, the phacopenes, have a type of eye called a schizophrol eye, and it's also kind of like what Ampeliska has. It's like little compound eyes within an eye, essentially, which is very weird. But yeah, so eyes are very strange. There are a couple groups of fish that have independently, like they've gone from 2 eyes to 4 eyes. The most interesting one, in my opinion, is called Bathylichnops exilus. So what it did was it has its normal eyes, which point forward, but it actually built a second set of eyes that hang down and they point downward. And so apparently what it's looking for is like bioluminescent shrimp on the seafloor. So it's looking forward and also down. And it has a retina in both of its eyes. But the cool thing is, when they're juveniles, they don't have the second pair of eyes that point down. They only have the forward pointing eyes. So there's a second developmental process.
But does it have separate eye sockets, or are the pair of eyes in the same eye socket?
They're on the same eye socket. They like hang down from the eyes, but it's like a separate. So it's like some developmental process happens which causes this like extra little cupping to form.
Wow.
With another retina and all this sort of stuff, and a lens. So it has a lens, a vitreous mass, and a retina at the back. So it's like another set of camera eyes that evolved secondarily.
Tesla is asking about whether the shrimp use luciferase for bioluminescence.
Possibly. Luciferase is like, it's just a group of enzymes, isn't it? It's like the ones that are involved in bioluminescence.
Like it may be polyphyletic in protein
right.
terms, I think.
Yeah, there may be a bunch of different groups that use luciferase.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's entirely possible.
Yeah. Luciferase meaning light bringer in old. Yeah, and I think it's Greek, right? Lucifer.
Lucifer. It's like
Greek. Light bringer.
Right, like is it like phosphorus is also like light bringer or something like that?
Right. Etymology again.
Here we are back to linguistics. We've come full circle.
And in Dutch, it's just a match.
Yes.
I mean, Lucifer is a match.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We call like if it's a really long match, we name it. We call it Lucifer. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I also
short matches we call it just a match. I think, right? Short. If it's very short, then it's just a match. Right.
What?
But anyway, moving on.
If it's short, we call it a match. It's all Lucifers.
I'm maybe it's a regional thing, but but I reserve the term Lucifer for long matches. Maybe it's a regional thing. Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. The only other thing about eyes I wanted to point out was, I remember now. There are so flatworms, basically the platyhelminths, have independently invented both like compound eyes and camera eyes. Very, very simple, or well, really they're cup eyes. They're not full camera eyes. But so you can find flatworms that have like little teeny tiny compound eyes and also have cup eyes at the same time. Or, they're in the same phylum. They've independently developed these.
And there are also lizards that have a third eye, right?
Yeah, like the tuatara. Yeah, yes. On the top of their head. Yeah. Well, I think it was Richard Dawkins said something to the effect of like animals are like indecently like giddy to evolve eyes or something like that. Because we've evolved them like 20 different times in animals, and that's not even counting the number of times that eyes have evolved, or eyes, light sensitive photoreceptive organelles have evolved in like protists. So eyes, opsins, so the opsins are the protein that we use to detect light. So a photon hits the opsin and it changes its conformation, and this causes a cascade of chemical and electrical changes, which cause us to detect light. Well, opsins are a subset of these this protein family, which is extremely large, and lots of other protists, unicellular eukaryotes, have independently evolved different proteins within the same family to also do that. So if a photon hits this protein, it stimulates a conformational change, and maybe this opens one of their like membrane receptors or something like that. That's happened many, many times over. There are these guys called Warnoids, which I think are dinoflagellates. And what they do is they have what's called like a hyalosome. It looks kind of like a light bulb. So light goes through this little light bulb-like structure and hits the plastid at the back, and that's what causes that's how they detect light. So yeah, and then of course you have like Euglena, which light strikes the eye spot at the base of its flagellum, and that's what causes it to spin and turn, all that sort of stuff. So it knows like, oh, light's coming from that direction, and I've got a plastid, so I need to do photosynthesis. So I'm going to go that way. So, yeah.
And there's also interesting things about like some cephalopod eyes. Like if you see like an octopus, that's a really weirdly shaped pupil, and it turns out it uses its pupil to refract different wavelengths of light, and so different colors of light are hitting different spots in the retina, and that's how it's able to tell different colors, even though it doesn't have different opsins or different doesn't have different receptors. Yeah,
that's pretty
cool. We have 4 receptors, right? Like one for in the dark, and one for blue, one for red, and one for
right.
Yeah, for green. But like cephalopods only have one, but some can still differentiate colors by refracting different wavelengths of light with their weirdly shaped pupil. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is pretty cool. I know fish have they have like lenses that have different different refractive indices. So it's not like ours where it's the same refractive index the whole way. It's like different parts of it have different indices. So
and there's also the reason why cats have like these slit pupils, because cats' lenses are also like the lens itself, like the different parts of the lens refract different wavelengths such that all wavelengths hit the same spot. So it's pretty much really efficient at focusing every single wavelength of light on a single spot, so you have a very clear image even during the night. However, it messes up some things which is compensated by the slit lens. If you have, because with the slit, then it's more. Apparently, it's better.
It's
better
more
image
acute.
Without, it's more acute. Yeah.
And that's right. Yeah, it's the smaller your like the aperture is, the more acute your image is.
Right.
Right. And so you could imagine, like, in theory, if you had like an infinitely small aperture, you'd have like an infinitely resolved, picture or something like that. But of course, it doesn't work that way. So interestingly, spiders also don't have. Spiders don't have compound eyes. They have.
There's a 1 second. There's a 1 second delay. Sometimes I'm interrupting. Sorry for that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's probably my internet. My internet sucks. But yeah, spiders
don't
have camera eyes actually,
Jackson.
and instead of the way that they take in images, especially for like wolf spiders and jumping spiders. So like Cosidae and Salticidae. Instead, they don't just look at something; their eyes actually scan it. So their eyes do this whole scan, and that's how they build their picture of reality, which I think is really neat because their retina is like a strip. It's not like ours where it's like a sheet that covers the back of our eyes. Theirs is just a little strip. And so they have to do that scanning motion back and forth but they have very high resolution with that method. So still works.
What I want to mention was I think Hank Green from like Science Show has a video on like a one weird cat who has, unlike any other cat, it has like our type of pupil, like the just normal round pupil, and we don't really know why it has that, unlike all the other cats who have these slit pupils. Yeah.
There's also a dog that has like eyes very similar to humans also, and I don't remember I don't remember what dog it was, but anyways, yeah. Eyes are very strange, and they've evolved lots of times. We have like the whole gradient. That's why the more that I've like had to read about the evolution of eyes, the more that I'm like, I don't understand how creationists think this is the thing that they're going to die on, the hill they're going to die on. Because like we have everything. We have the whole gradient.
We have an eye, so-called have an eye,
yeah. We have literally everything from like protists having like one protein that they use to detect the direction of light, all the way up to us, and we basically have the same kind of eye that fish do. Like the camera eye that we have kind of topped out in like the Silurian basically, and we just have sort of variations on this structure for the past 400 million years or so.
It turns out even prokaryotes have a very, like, maybe not an eye, but still something related. Like there are some archaea that have a protein, also an opsin. I think a rhodopsin it's called, and it's very similar to our opsin. It may be unrelated, but it's very similar. It also has beta carotene in it, I think, and the archaea uses it in a somewhat form of photosynthesis where it pumps hydrogen by using the energy of photons, by absorbing by using the opsin to absorb photons, and that's how it pumps protons for its proton gradient, and using the proton gradient for ATP synthesis. Yeah, it's really neat how it uses that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then I think it's kind of funny that there are flatworms who have cup eyes just like us, and just like us, they have the nerves coming in from the outside. So the nerves like come out and go into the eye and go to the photoreceptor, basically.
Yeah.
So where the nerves are that connect to the photoreceptors, which is kind of funny. It's like God really hated the flatworms. But I don't know.
But where do the neurons come from? Do they come from the outside, or
they come from
the inside, like ours?
No, they come from outside. If they come like from outside the eye and like go into the eye.
Yeah.
And so it's like the photons.
Well, at least they don't have the blind. At least they don't have the blind spot then, because we have the blind spot because our neurons come from inside the retina, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if they have a blind spot. I don't know if anyone's figured that out. Has anyone asked the flatworms if they have a blind spot? But yeah. Well,
how would you test?
Minutes left, so
how would you test that? Sneak up on them from different angles. See if they respond.
Right? Do they go,
That's
pretty
hard to test.
So we're 14 episodes in. I think that's about 28 hours into this, because every episode's 2 hours. So I think we're done with this book. Did man get here by evolution or by creation? I believe we're done. So Peter and I have been talking about different ideas for future episodes, because I do want to keep doing this sort of streaming thing regularly. I enjoy it. If Peter, if you don't want to do it anymore, feel free to tell me.
No, it's an awful lot of fun. I mean, even though so at times I'm a little bit more vocal. So today I just listened because I learn, and that's for me. It's the fun part of the show, and I mean, we go back a long time. We haven't done that much in years, so I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
Actually, so yeah. I've got no problem with it.
I really do appreciate it.
And if we can stick to the same day and same time, I can put my other schedule around it, so that's no problem whatsoever. I'm just having fun hanging out, whether or not I'm on camera or not.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Dessel has a very good suggestion. It would have been better if you tossed it in the garbage at the end of your.
And that's the end of that. Yeah, no.
In the bin.
Because I still refer to it every so often. Actually, RJ and I refer to it in The Rocks Were There Volume 1, because this book mentions genetic entropy before genetic sequencing was a thing. So how did they possibly know?
Does it even called by the term also the same?
No, it doesn't say. It doesn't call it by that name, but it does say the whole organisms are only degrading in their like genetics and all this sort of stuff, and they're just getting worse over time. It's like, okay,
yeah, it's maybe a so-called unrefined version of
right. Well, I mean, and that was the point that we made in the Rocks Were There, was it's the same crap. They're not coming up with new arguments. This is the same thing they've been saying literally for the past 60 years, or 50 years, 50, 60 years. However long.
So
yeah, 60 years.
It's really funny. It's really funny you say that, because it's the same crap, but they are continue to polish it from occasion to occasion.
Yes.
But polishing a turd, it's still a turd.
Exactly. That you're right. And the funny thing about that is, like, genetic sequencing didn't really start happening until like the late 70s. So you couldn't possibly have known that gene sequences were degrading. I don't know. But yeah, it just shows that it's the same arguments as we've been saying this whole series, that creationism does not change. It's the same stuff recycling over and over again. I'm honestly surprised they didn't like throw in the bombardier beetle in there, but they did throw in the eye. So you got to hit all the high points.
I think the only times they do change is when they abandon arguments that are so embarrassing that they can't just let people use it anymore, like the Ica stones, right?
Unless you're Kent Hovind. He still uses the Ica stones. I mean, there's a reason that Ken Ham has put up several pages. Don't use this argument anymore. Don't use the moon dust argument. Don't use the Ica stones. And Kent Hovind is, I'm going to use everything because my audience doesn't care, and I'm going to make money off of this. And he does. I mean, what is it? About $2 million a year? Not a bad income.
I wouldn't be surprised. That is not a bad income. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
how does he manage to? Nah, never mind.
Lots of donations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stealing $100,000 from your wife. Also not.
Also doesn't hurt. Yeah. That's true.
Also helps.
Yeah. So one of the ideas we were tossing around, and one I think we're going to go with, is I did actually find a book that, on one hand, I kind of want to review.
Can you maybe read a good book for a change?
We are reading a good book. We're doing a whole series on a good book.
Oh, right. I mean, for a live stream, maybe.
What I would like to do. So there is a book, a climate denial book, that I came across recently. Funny enough, by from the exact same person who gave me this, also recommended the climate denial book. So yeah, that happened.
I thought you were about to say from the same author.
No, funny enough, this book doesn't have an author. It just says from Watchtower. So we don't know. That's why I've just been saying he says in the book, but we don't actually know. But so the same person who recommended me, who gave me this book, recommended me that one. But the problem with the other one is it would take more research to disassemble, and so I'm leaning towards more like we'll do an actual series on it, like what we're doing with the Ancestor's Tale, with that, because it would take more research, at least on my end, I think, to sort of peel back the arguments. So what I would like to do instead, what I think I want to do is we will watch videos. We'll live respond to videos. How does that sound, Peter?
I mean,
going the Dapper Dino method, right?
Yeah, there are some, like there's a Frank Turek video I saw a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to pull my hairs out watching it, and I was like, this isn't worth making a video response because he's not worth my time. But it would be fun to respond to this because his arguments are so bad. They're so bad.
One of my favorite clips that you put in your videos from him is like him going like, "Oh, they don't often talk about this, but we are related to plants too."
Right? Like, are you serious? No, he actually says in the stream, evolutionists can't explain why there are differences between organisms. Like, what? What do you mean? Also, Bibia666 says, Ancestor's Tale, it's why I got introduced to this channel. Really? Well, fantastic. We're at the very least, I am having a lot of fun with this series. I'm loving this series. We're covering a lot of really cool stuff. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'm quite proud of it. And Netzlig actually just made all of these new thumbnails for us for this series, and they all look very nice. So
that's like some of the view, like sometimes the views are higher, sometimes lower, but maybe it helps to get the
I really don't understand the distribution of views. Like the Cro-Magnon's Tale is far and ahead the most watched. Why? No idea. It's not like it's better produced or worse produced than all the other ones. It's like got the same level of the same quality of production as all the other ones. It's not like we're bringing up super novel arguments or anything. We're just kind of going over what the literature says. So I don't know why that one did so much better.
Maybe it's triggered the algorithm with a bit of title or something. I have no idea why.
Could be, yeah. I'm like, the funny thing about the Cro-Magnon's Tale is it's maybe the only tale that has no answer, right? The Cro-Magnon's Tale is what is the definition of modern human behavior. And by the end of the video, we're like, we don't know what it is. Nobody else seems to know what it is. So, and for some reason, that video has like 4,000 more views than the next highest video. And I have no idea why. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me.
Sometimes it's weird. So this week I had an argument with a jaunist. I didn't know what a jaunist was, and I
don't know.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with yawning, Jackson. So that's what I thought, but it doesn't apparently. Apparently, this is a new religion where everyone can believe what they want. There are no rules.
Okay.
So you can have Christians being jaunists and Jews and Muslims and flat earthers, and they can all be jaunists. And this guy was kind of annoying because he claimed that he had more subscribers than I have. And so I watched his channel, and he's got an average of 28 views with 4K subs. So
Okay.
that doesn't line up. And so I looked at my own channel. I don't have the greatest views, but I looked at the ones that stood out. So there are 3 videos.
Speedy in the chat. Oh, sorry. Speedy in the chat says jaundice. The condition when your liver doesn't work anymore. I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so,
right.
But I have 3 videos that stand out that we made ourselves. The one with Kent Hovind, the one with Cephalopod, and then there's a fairly unknown street preacher, which that was a show that Robert and I did. That was the first show when Robert joined our channel, and that is the show that we're least proud of. Kent Hovind has the least amount of views from all of those. Cephalopod has a little bit more. The street preacher one, which we thought was a dumpster fire, over 7,000 views. I have no clue why.
Nice.
We don't like the video that we did. We don't like the way we responded because the guy was triggering us. And we're not proud of the video. By far the most amount of views on the channel. So maybe we should just do I don't know, shit shows and dumpster fires, but I don't want to do that.
It works for modern day debate, doesn't it?
Yeah, but so I don't want to do that. I want to have a decent conversation because I think that's a lot more productive. And so I won't name names, but if you switch over and only have dumpster fires, your channel will die in a dumpster fire, and that's not what I want to do. I mean, I've got a great group of people on my channel, and I want to keep those people together.
So I won't name names.
Also interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there is a certain channel that does dumpster fires also recently decided to start having Nazis join his dumpster fires. So that tracks, Peter. That makes sense.
Yeah, no.
It's also interesting to note that your most popular video is well sex, and I wonder why that is the case.
It's because of these dang Canadians. If anyone doesn't know the story behind whale sex, 2 very drunk Canadians who were laughing about Answers in Genesis one, was it New Year's Eve, I think, made a video in which they said Jackson should do a video about whale sex. God, that was 2018, wasn't it? I think that was 2018. Ooh,
seems like a decade
how was
ago.
that 4 years ago? Oh my God. So, whew.
I haven't looked.
My channel is old enough to register for first grade.
How long ago is it when you had PZ on your channel? And then I got to ask him one question. I was completely blown away. I asked PZ Myers one question because he came back for the after show.
I think that was also 2018 because I was still down in Baton Rouge when that happened. So that was 2017 or 2018. Yeah.
And then after asking him one question, I think it was a couple of weeks later when I got an invitation. Hey, want to come on my channel? We're going to talk about a movie that you haven't seen. And I only recently got to see it because some student, I won't name names, isn't it? I won't name names. Some student gave me some information where to get it without paying for it. And because I don't want to pay someone money for trash like that.
Wait, was it me?
I said I wouldn't name names. Yeah, it was you. But I mean that.
You know what? It's almost October. It's time to be a pirate. For October, that's my Halloween costume.
Oh, okay. Well, and I'm just
saying, if the FBI ever comes looking for me, they won't have to look very hard for evidence against me. That's all I'm saying.
I live in the forest. No one can find me anyway, so I don't even. There's not even a street. It's just I live behind a farm. There's
Yeah.
a dirt road in between some fields and leads to what looks like nothing. But if you go there, there's actually a cabin. So.
Yeah. Well,
which means I can't receive any mail, which is why I still have the house in town. So that works.
Yeah. Well, we are at the 2-hour mark, so we're gonna call it. So is there anything, Nestle? Is there anything you'd like to add to the show before we hop off?
Well, I have one thing to say, but it's not really relevant to the talk. But I'm really happy to hear that Diablo Canyon was saved in California, the nuclear power plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a good thing. Yeah.
Because nuclear power is low carbon, and we really need low carbon power to stay on. That's it.
I 100% agree with you on that. I'm absolutely on board.
Dutch
Peter,
government.
anything you want to add?
Yeah, Dutch government is looking into nuclear power again, with everything that's going on the planet, because prices of gas are going up.
Yeah, it's also a funny thing, but then again, not a funny thing. Like Germany is really anti-nuclear, especially the government. But recently, the pipeline where gas from Russia to Germany got blown up, apparently, probably deliberately. And now we hear something changing with the German government. Maybe we will keep our nuclear power plants for a bit longer time than we planned. Like it's like you hear such things from that now. So
yeah, we do need to switch over. Yeah, absolutely. Nuclear power is the best way forward at present, and so that's what we should be switching over to. So, alrighty. Well, thank you, Nestle, for coming, and thank you, Peter, for hosting, as always. Thank you, everybody in the side chat who was watching. We appreciate all of you. And we will see all of you next time. So, bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.